Good Friday morning, and thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet, the voice you know with the news you trust studio, sponsored by BASF. Visit with your local ag retailer about 0% financing on all BASF crop protection, seed treatment, and Zetavo brand soybeans now through March 15th. I'm Dusty Sonnenberg. Well, under clear skies, I have 16 degrees on the barn thermometer. Now, with a little bit of breeze, it does make it feel much cooler than that outside this morning. Thanks for joining us on our first broadcast of 2026. This quick programming note, be sure to tune in on Tuesday as we help seed consultants kick off their 2026 winter agronomy meetings, this time at the Lakeview Loft in Hillsboro. To get a full list of meetings and RSVP, visit seedconsultants.com. Taking a look at your agricultural headlines, the U.S. Department of Agriculture released back on Wednesday additional details on the commodity-by-commodity national payment rates for the one-time Farmer Bridge Assistance Programs, otherwise known as the FBA program, providing short-term financial support to eligible farmers facing continued economic pressure from the low commodity prices and high input costs. Now, under the program, corn growers nationwide will receive $44.36 per eligible acre. This represents a modest increase compared to the previous Emergency Commodity Assistance Program, or the ECAP, under which corn was paid $42.91 an acre. USDA has indicated that qualifying farmers can expect payments by the end of February 2026. Now, if we take a look at soybeans, the payment rate there is expected to be $30.88. And for wheat growers, USDA announced a payment rate of $39.35 per planted acre, again, reflecting the ongoing challenges producers faced in 2025. Now, farmers who believe they may qualify for the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program are encouraged to review program details and eligibility requirements and stay in contact with their local USDA Farm Service Agency. For more information, you can also go to the website. That's www.fsa.usda.gov/FBA. Taking a look at what's trending at OhioAgNet.com, if you think that the use of artificial intelligence in agriculture is in the future, your timing might actually be a little off. According to Dr. Scott Shear, chair of the Department of Food Ag and Biological Engineering at Ohio State's College of Food Ag and Environmental Sciences, farmers are currently using AI technology to make agronomic and economic decisions. Dr. Shear was one of the presenters at the Ohio No-Till Conference back in December. He said one of the things that we're starting to see is AI used for automation on field machinery. Autonomous tractors with collision avoidance will be done by using artificial intelligence, and more importantly, the technology will allow farmers to selectively apply any of their inputs. In other words, we go to the field, and instead of making a broad application to control weeds, we're just going to spray the individual weeds. You can read more about this at OhioAgNet.com. Now, in addition, we've got some great audio that's up. In addition to seed research and agronomic expertise, Beck's Hybrids also offers their customers a commitment to farmer profitability through real-time market insights. Dale Mignot is going to visit with Beck's grain marketing consultant Matt Bennett about his role with the seed company. Also online now is the latest edition of the Ohio Field Leader podcast. And finally, as we begin a new year, our own Brianna Smith shares some of her insights about her word of the year. All that, as well as the latest in markets and weather, online at OhioAgNet.com. Well, let's take a minute and turn our attention to South America and weather patterns that could impact their soybean crop. Now, there aren't too many reasons we typically worry about South American crops at this time of the year, but as we get into January, it does become more important. It hasn't been perfect, but soil moisture stands in a very good spot for most of Argentina as well as Paraguay and southern Brazil. And soil moisture has improved significantly across much of central and northern Brazil, though it is a bit tenuous in some areas. Looking at Argentina in particular, the country has taken some good rainfall in the spring and so far has been able to endure a slower pace of showers this summer to leave most areas with near or above normal soil moisture actually at this point in the season. Fronts have been less frequent, but they have been potentially large, producing widespread precipitation. During the week of Christmas, the rainfall had slowed down significantly. A front stalled across northern areas and continued to drop plenty of rain there, but central and southern areas have dried out now. A cold front did push through during the last week of December, and showers are forecast to be quite spotty. Now, we may start to see much drier trends for the southern half of Argentina's growing areas. Long-range versions of both the American GFS and the European models have well below normal precipitation in those areas, prime corn and soybean growing areas we're talking about. Models hint nearly the entire month of January will be a drier pattern, though the GFS model is more forgiving with increased rainfall chances arriving at the midpoint of the month. If a period of dryness comes to Argentina, January is most likely the month that will occur, and during a La Nina, those chances increase, so this stretch of dryness is neither unexpected nor unprecedented, but the period could prove very important. The first phase of corn planting completed as scheduled, and the second phase is already half over, resulting in 77% of their total corn crop being planted already. Corn from the first phase should largely be in the pollinating to filling stages, and the soil moisture so far has allowed that to occur as usual. However, the second phase of corn is seeing soil moisture reductions from the top of the soil column downward, and young plants could be hit with stressful conditions for the early growth that they need. Soybeans are mainly planted in November and December, and some of the early planted beans are getting into the blooming stage, and water availability will become more important with time, while those later planted soybeans can endure a period of dryness in their early growth stage that could then be improved by increased rainfall in about a month. Moisture in late January and into February can help to reduce losses for both crops, but that will depend on the temperature forecast as well. If it's not raining, it's usually hotter, and that indeed is the forecast for much of January for most of Argentina. So far, weather conditions have been good enough to keep the crop conditions at better than normal readings, but concerns could start to mount in January if the forecast holds true. It certainly will be something we want to monitor. Well, speaking of the forecast, let's check in on that Friday morning weather forecast brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com.
Cold air in here to finish the week and go through the weekend. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin. Let's take a look at that Ohio Ag weather update. Honestly, not too shabby here. Now, we do still see clouds mixing with sunshine over the course of the next few days, but we're also going to be seeing temperatures slowly but surely gain a little strength. I'm not looking for a lot of strength, but a little strength as we move into tomorrow and especially on Sunday. Now, as we move into that Sunday time frame, also have to pay attention to a little bit of moisture to our north, trying to track across Michigan into Ontario. That may throw some clouds down. But then as we move into the upcoming week, well above normal temperatures pretty much all week long. Light little bit of rain Tuesday before a stronger front comes together over Ohio late in the week, Saturday into Sunday. The 10th into the 11th, that front brings good rain, but also a significant cool down for that weekend. I'm meteorologist Ryan Martin.
Thanks, Ryan. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more after this.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
They didn't have skim milk for your coffee, so I just got formaldehyde.
Ugh. Isn't that stuff in floor cleaner?
Pizza's here. Would you like cheese on that? Or how about a Crowley?
Oh, no, that's in bug spray.
Hi there. Would you like to sample our new scent? Diethylene glycol.
Isn't that the stuff in antifreeze?
You wouldn't want to eat it, drink it, or even smell it, but that's exactly what's in your vapes. If you vape, quit. If you don't vape, don't start. For help, go to odh.ohio.gov/novapes. A message from the Ohio Department of Health.
Welcome back to the Ohio AgNet. Today we want to take a look at potash, as the outlook for the global potash fertilizer market is much more positive compared to nitrogen and phosphorus outlooks for 2026. Global potash supplies are expected to continue to be high and might even increase. Affordability is optimistic, unlike the other major nutrients, and this is expected to continue into the new year. While potash outlook remains mostly positive, there are potential clouds on the horizon, though. At the top of the list are various geopolitical issues issues occurring internationally. Now, the IFA, the International Fertilizer Association, said global fertilizer use recovered in 2024, reached a new record. The report was released in 2025 and covers fertilizer years from which run January of one year to January of the next for some countries, but they do run mid-year to mid-year for others, so it's a little hard to distinguish there. Fertilizer use, meaning nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash, increased 4.5% to 198 million metric tons of nutrients in 2023 and was projected to rise another 4.4%, reaching 206 million metric tons in 2024, and this marks a 17 million metric ton increase from the low of 189 million metric tons in 22 and 4 million metric tons above the previous record demand of 202 million metric tons, which was set back in 2020. Now, increases in global fertilizer usage are expected to be seen between 2025 and 2029, though at a slower pace than the past 2 years, according to the IFA, with an annual growth rate projected between 1% and 2%. Total use is forecast to be 224 million metric tons by 2029. That an increase of 18 million metric tons compared to what it was in 2024. These increases came on the heels of significant contractions in global fertilizer usage in 21 and 22 due to higher prices, and the recovery in nutrient use was largely driven by a sharp decline in prices from their peaks in mid-2022. Now, as far as supplies go, the supply forecast for potash fertilizers continues to be positive, according to the IFA. Global murate of potash, or MOP, fertilizer production is estimated to have increased by 10% to 76.6 million metric ton in 24. That's a record high, and these production increases were driven by Eastern Europe and Central Asian countries, namely Russia and Belarus, facilitated by new established trade routes and response to sanctions. Additionally, potash production in Canada and Laos increased by 8% and 20% respectively compared to 2023, that according to the IFA data. In line with rising output, the murate of potash trade continued to grow in 2024, increasing by 10% to 59.9 million metric tons. That's the highest volume on record, the IFA report said, and this growth was largely fueled by recovering demand in East Asia and Latin America following a sharp decline in 2022 due to poor affordability. Now, global potash capacity is expected to increase by 20% between 2024 and 2029, reaching 77.4 million metric tons globally. The IFA reports that Canada, Russia, and Laos are expected to be the primary contributors to this growth. Stay tuned. We'll be back to take a look at your markets after this.
Attention construction pros. Purple Wave Auction brings quality equipment to your fingertips. Join our bi-weekly online auctions featuring dozers, excavators, loaders, and more. We provide detailed listings, photos, and seller contact info. Inspect online or in person. With our no reserve policy, every item sells to the highest bidder. Visit purplewave.com today and see why informed builders choose Purple Wave. Transparent processes, real deals. Your next great purchase awaits. purplewave.com.
It's time now for today's market analysis, brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company. Excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. Call 574-566-2113 for information on soybean marketing to LDC.
Good news this morning. The markets were not lower yesterday. The bad news, it's because the markets didn't trade yesterday. Yesterday was New Year's Day. Back on Wednesday, we went down again. Futures went lower on soybeans by a significant level. We reached the lowest price since back on October 20th. That's key because that means we've erased all the gains since President Trump and Chinese President Xi got together, talked, and sang kumbaya. The market definitely is trying to pull back. Brokers indicate that managed money sold 3,200 contracts of beans and 1,100 contracts of meal, 2,500 contracts of oil. On the corn and wheat side, they sold 1,700 contracts of wheat, but they did buy 1,100 contracts of corn. Weekly export sales report for the week ending December 18th had corn at 86.7 million bushels, 36.3 million bushels of beans, 5.4 million bushels of wheat, still behind last year on beans. I'm Ryan Martin.
Thanks, Ryan. Let's take a look now at your markets, brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. With the New Year's Day holiday yesterday, there was no trade, but on the last day of trading for 2025, the soybean market continued its free fall with with the fourth consecutive lower finish. Wheat fell as well for the fourth straight day on rising global production and competition and a marketing year low export sales week. Corn held its head above water, but barely, resting on the laurels of a record large sales pace, but fading to unchanged by the end. Now back on Wednesday, March corn closed down 1/4 cent a bushel at $4.40 1/4 cents, and May closed down 1/4 penny a bushel at $4.48 1/4. January soybeans were down 15 3/4 cents at $10.30 1/2, and March beans down 14 3/4 at $10.47 1/2 cents. Kansas City wheat closed the day down 7 1/4 at $5.14 3/4. Your March Chicago wheat was down 3 3/4 cents at $5.07, and Minneapolis wheat was down 4 1/2 cents at $5.74. This is the Ohio AgNet.